Hey y'all, welcome to Peyton Energetics. I'm Peyton and I'm a Pleiadian channel. Now, in today's Pleiadian point of view, the Pleiadians wanted to talk to us a little bit about manifestation and, in particular, about something they notice the human collective doing that blocks our manifestation efforts. So before we jump into the topic of what is blocking many of us from manifesting what we want to create, let's talk a little bit about the manifestation process in general. So as y'all know, if you have been on your spiritual path for a while, we are in the process as a human collective of moving from what we call third dimension into fifth dimension. And as we do this, essentially this is a process of elevating our collective consciousness. So that is what so many of us on our spiritual path have been working on so diligently for such a long time, is to raise our consciousness. And a big part of that process is learning how to control and raise our frequency on a consistent basis. So as we are going through this global process, the entire human race is doing this, moving from 3D, which was an operating system or construct of reality, if you like the big words, where everything was constrained or limited by linear time. And the way that we created things in our life was based on physical action, basically, right? And so most of us spent most of, or at least a good part of our adult lives in 3D. We officially, as a collective, left third dimension on the winter solstice of 2012. So not that long ago. So most of us have spent most of our lives operating in what we call a 3D operating system. So of course, that is governed by linear time. So we all know that as having a past, a present, and a future. And we created in 3D through physical action. So anything we wanted to create in our life, we had to go through a set series of steps. And you really couldn't mix and match them. You couldn't skip ahead if you got bored. You had to do things the long way. But now that we are moving out of third dimension, the way we create things is changing pretty dramatically. So action is no longer the only way to create things. So we are now in what we call fourth dimension. And fourth dimension is this really interesting kind of like a limbo zone. Because what's interesting about fourth dimension is you can apply the rules of 3D or you can apply the rules of 5D. And a lot of light workers and starseeds are starting to connect with fifth dimensional energies more and more regularly. We're actually learning to work from 5D energies. So the cool thing about where we are right now is we can choose one of two operating systems. We can choose to do things, including manifest things in our life, the way we have always done it, which is the 3D way. Or we can choose to use some new tools that are coming along that let us do things much more easily. So whereas we know what it was like to create in 3D, it was challenging. It took a long time. There was a lot of effort involved. And there was very little flexibility. And when we look around at the world around us, we see that a lot of people are choosing to still operate from that perspective, from that operating system. But the Pleiadians wanted us to know that's not necessary anymore. There is an easier way. So we just have to rethink how we approach things, how we go about creating whatever it is we want to create in our life, whether that's a relationship, whether that's more abundance, whether that is a particular accomplishment that you're looking to do. The way we create that, we now have another way to go about that. Or as the Pleiadians like to say, you can do it the easy way, or you can continue to do it the hard way. So when we talk about this new way to manifest that is becoming available to us, now this takes a little practice. It doesn't necessarily happen the first time you try it, but As you start to practice what they're talking about, things get so much easier. So the way we create in fifth dimensional energies is using frequency instead of physical action. So the language of manifestation in fifth dimensional energies is through our frequency. So that long, hard process that we are used to having to go through for anything we wanted to create in life, even if it was just making dinner, there is an easier way to create now. And we do that using our frequency. Now, you know what your frequency is. You have heard all of your spiritual teachers talking about this for years now. And that is the vibration that we are sending out to the universe pretty much all the time. And we actually can control that signal we are sending out. And as we learn to do that, we learn to control our signal, our frequency, our vibration. Those all mean kind of the same thing for purposes of this conversation. So the way that we actually create in the fifth dimension is through our frequency. Now, another way you can look at this is we will create through our feeling state. So if you are interested in playing with this concept, one way to do that is to just start asking yourself, instead of the old way, which is we would create a plan of action, right? We would have our 5-year plan or our 2-year plan where we would think of all the physical steps we had to take and what we would have to do to get to the end result we were after, right? So if you wanted to create a relationship, you knew you had to start dating. You had to get on the dating apps. You had to actually do those blind dates. But we're changing how we create now. And that is to work with our frequency and let our frequency do the heavy lifting for us. Now, the way that you do this, according to the Pleiadians, is when you think about that thing that you are trying to create in your life, trying to manifest, ask yourself one simple question. How do you want to feel when this is done, when this is manifested? So if you're looking to create that perfect relationship, maybe you want to feel safe. Maybe you want to feel loved. Maybe you want to feel appreciated. So ask yourself, how do you want to feel? Because feeling state is kind of a great shortcut to figuring out your frequency. And then start to practice how you want to feel when you are in that situation. So when you start to meet people and talk to them, remind yourself, what is the feeling state you want to create around this manifestation? Not so much what action steps do you have to take, but what do you want to feel like when this is done? Because you don't want to go on 20 blind dates only to find that none of them will make you feel secure and loved and connected. So what the Pleiadians are showing us is we have a new way to do business, a new way to create and manifest. So as you start to play with your frequency as your tool of manifestation, again, instead of that, to-do list, that action list, you start to let your frequency, because as you practice that feeling state, as you start to practice, what would it feel like to feel loved and connected and supported? You start to fill your energy field with that frequency. And as you do that, your energy field starts to bring to you things and people who match that signal, because you don't want to be attracting the people who aren't interested in trust and connection, which, if you're purely focused on physical action, is what is probably going to happen. So we have this new creative tool available to us to start using fifth dimensional operating systems to create our life. And so the guides are telling us that if we start to take advantage of the fifth dimensional approach to manifestation, we will only need a fraction of the physical action that used to be required. So maybe you only need to go on that one blind date to find your soulmate instead of kissing frogs for 3 years. So this is an easier way to create. Now, the second thing that the Pleiadians wanted to point out in this point of view is something that they see tripping up a lot of people as they start to do their energy work and start to try this new technique of manifestation. And so what the Pleiadians wanted us to understand, to save ourselves a lot of frustration, is that as you start to shift your frequency on whatever you're trying to create, so let's stick with that relationship example. So as you start to focus on how you want to feel, of course, you shift your frequency, you raise your frequency. And then the universe starts to bring you things that match your new changed signal, your new changed frequency. Now, the guides wanted us to understand one important thing, and that is we have kind of a self-testing mechanism built into this process. So the guides say that as you shift your vibration, the first thing that's going to be reflected to you is the old reflection. So basically, as you start to think about that relationship you want to manifest, the first thing you may see is something that looks a lot like the old way. Now, this can pop up in two different ways. Now, it may look like nothing has changed. So you may think that you are trying this new technique, you're really focusing on how you want to feel in your new relationship, and you notice nothing is happening. But the guides say that's not actually true. They say that the first thing that the universe will show you is an identical reflection. So you have changed. You have sent out a new vibrational signal, and the universe is responding to that. But the universe wants to see if we're serious about this change. So we've put in a little self-test for ourselves to see if we have really changed on this issue. If we are serious about wanting a relationship that is loving, trusting, supportive. And so the first reflection is going to be a reflection of the past. And this is what trips up so many people in the spiritual community, because we think our manifestation didn't work. So what happens is we get discouraged, we start to doubt the process, we start to throw our tools out the window, we don't do our spiritual practice anymore because we think, what is the point? Nothing is changing. And I know that I have caught myself in this many, many, many times. So when the Pleiadians raise this, y'all, the struggle is real. This happens to so many people. And I hear this almost across the board from my starseed clients as well, that they have tried everything and it didn't work. So what the Pleiadians wanted us to understand about manifesting in these new energies is that the first reflection, and maybe the first couple, so this may last a couple days, it may last a couple weeks, is going to look a lot like the old way, like nothing happened. But the catch here is the universe is testing us to see whether we have really shifted our vibration on this topic. Because as we know, if you don't shift the energy, nothing happens. So our task then, our job as light workers and starseeds, is to, when we see that nothing has changed, double down on the frequency we want to see happen. So going back to how do you want to feel in that dream relationship, no matter what is reflected to you, because that is how you prove to your higher self that you have learned your lesson. Because if you're just going to go back to the old way that you used to try to manifest, which didn't work, then the universe will see you haven't learned your lesson. So our challenge as light workers and starseeds is to keep going when we get that reflection that seems to make us believe nothing has changed. Now, another thing that can happen, because I mentioned there were two things, it can actually look like it's getting worse. And again, this is just a little self-test that our higher selves have built into this process to make sure we have learned our lesson. Have we really shifted our vibration on what we're trying to create? And so if we can look at a situation that either looks the same, like nothing happened, like it didn't work, or like it even got worse, can you still stay in the frequency of your dream manifestation? So can you go out on that first blind date, and even though it is going downhill fast, can you stay focused on a feeling of connection and trust and support? even if it's not being reflected to you across the dinner table or across the bar? Can you stay in the frequency of what you want to create? Because you're going to test yourself to make sure you are actually shifting your vibration. So that is one reason that so many people, when they start to do energy work or spiritual practice, feel like their life is burning down around them. And this is something that I know so many of my intuitive friends have talked about. This is a very common experience. Or you start to work on one particular area of yourself, and it seems like it's getting worse. So it gets us as humans very discouraged, very disappointed, and we start to doubt. We start to doubt our tools. We start to doubt what our spiritual teachers have taught us. And so what the Pleiadians wanted us to know in this week's point of view is, first of all, just to expect this and to actually look at this as a sign that it's working. Because our human mind, our ego, is going to say, girl, what are you doing? This is all a load of crap. Nothing is happening. This is actually a sign that your manifestation is working, because you're going to be presented with a few self-challenges, which is just a reflection of things staying the same or even getting a little worse sometimes. So our test as fifth dimensional manifestors is to, no matter what is reflected to us, stay in the feeling state of what we want to create. So if we can stay in the feeling state of what we want, our holding that frequency is what will bring it to us. So this is something just important for us to know, because it is such a source of stress in the spiritual community that we see things getting worse. We see things not working, and then we get into doubt and disappointment. And nothing kills our creative power faster than doubt and disappointment. So what the Pleiadians are suggesting to us is, first of all, know that this happens. Know that this is what you have at a higher level of consciousness built in to the system to make sure you've actually learned the lesson. So stay in your feeling state of what you want that relationship to feel like, or that abundance to feel like, even when what you see reflected to you seems to be very much not it. Because just knowing that this is part of how it works can keep you from getting discouraged, from abandoning what you're trying to create in your life. So this is a very important thing for all of us to know in the spiritual community, to help us manifest without getting derailed when things don't work out the first time. There's a reason for that. We built that into the system to make sure that we have really changed. Because once we have really changed our frequency on a topic, as the Pleiadians say, the reflection must change to reflect that. So stay patient, guys. Be aware that this is part of the learning process, and get excited when you see that it seems to be getting a little worse, looking at it as proof that you are changing. So anyway, that is this week's point of view. I hope this helped you. I'll see you soon. Bye.